Hi, my name is Olivia the OT, and if you're new here, I'm the face behind Noteworthy Resources, a platform that provides occupational therapy tools for particularly school-based therapists, but for really anyone who is working with children with disabilities and um, things like that. Today, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about a topic that I wish someone would have sat down with me and held my hand through when I first started in school-based practice 5 years ago. And that is progress monitoring. Believe it or not, if you are new to school-based OT or if you are more unfamiliar, progress monitoring in practice is and sounds like this really sturdy, quantifiable thing. And for whatever reason, in school-based OT, it is just not that. So I was completely overwhelmed and unprepared when I stepped into my first school-based OT job, and I didn't know how to take data on student progress at all. Okay. So I want to definitely highlight the fact that not knowing how to effectively track student data impacts our own perception of our abilities in practice. It reduces our own confidence. It makes us question what we're doing. Having a streamlined progress monitoring system is the first step towards feeling confident as a practitioner and knowing, because you can see it, the impact that you are making in student lives. That's super important. Secondly, I also want to say that having quantifiable data is, while it's amazing for us, incredibly important for the students that we're serving and for the teams that we're working on. Because ultimately, we're trying to help students meet goals. And if we don't have a system where we can do that effectively, we're going to run into barriers along the way. Okay. Those barriers can be time barriers, they can be, um, strategic barriers, they can be communication barriers. Really, they can be conflict barriers. There's all kinds of things that having a streamlined and effective progress monitoring system completely alleviates. So let's get into it. When I first started, I had nothing. In fact, I had goals and I had no way of tracking them aside from just whimsy and the occasional percentage calculation. It was very ineffective and it left me spending so much time and energy for each student and each goal in order to figure out where they were at every single month. So I decided enough of that. I'm going to create my own system so that while it's a little bit more work on the front end throughout the school year, I can breathe easy because I have a streamlined system that works for me and is effective at tracking student data. So I'm going to walk you through that. Essentially, the progress monitoring system is set up based on goal. So every single goal has its own resource. And then within those resources, it's broken down by month. So essentially, you're going to be tracking data for every goal once a month per student. And it's all put together in an easy to use packet. So, for example, we're going to get started with my first goal, which is I can cut simple shapes. Okay. If you have a scissor skills goal, you're working with a student on scissor skills, this is the packet for you. Okay, so the first page is always going to be instructions. This has your boring information for setting up the resource, administering the resource. It kind of talks about the different areas of the goal. So that one's important. And the reason that it's there, if you just need some like late night snooze reading, more so than just that. If you're working with another professional, an OTA or a special ed teacher, if it's a collaborative goal, things like that, sometimes it's helpful to kind of read through. Obviously, this is not a standardized tool, but it helps everybody to be on the same page and to take data in the same way. So that's what this page is about. Then the next page is usually where I start if I'm going to staple a resource or a whole bunch of resource together. This is going to be the page on top. So let's say I'm working with Tommy and his goal is to be able to cut out simple shapes. I'm going to fill out his information and this is going to be his data graph so I can visually see throughout the year where he's at with these different skills. So in order to kind of get into the bread and butter of this resource, I made it super, super simple, okay? Every month has its own work sample, all right? So this is August. It's back to school. School supply is themed. The student is, you or the student, whoever, is going to cut on this dashed line. They're going to have each of these shapes and they're going to cut them out. And you or the student is going to paste them in the associated shape. And then you have a half sheet with a work sample of them cutting out the shapes. And based on our instructions on the first page, you are going to give them a score. Okay, and then you're going to put the data from that score on your graph. And then we move on to the next month. So for every single month, there are different shapes. This just kind of keeps kids into it, even though it's the same activity. There are different shapes. Sometimes I'll let the kids color them, do whatever they want to do to keep them interested. And then they cut out the shapes and put them in the boxes above. So the beauty of this kind of a resource is now we have a full year's worth of work samples so that when it comes time for that student's meeting and we're walking in and I'm reporting on their progress, I have this to bring with me to show exactly what I did with a student. This is the data. This is the proof that they met their goal at 60% or whatever. You can share this with parents, with teachers, whoever is in the meeting to show them the progress that the student made throughout the school year. Again, it's boosting confidence and also it's just showing quantifiably what has been done. So we prep these at the beginning of the school year. If the student has 2 goals, we print, the goal for cutting and the goal for writing, whatever, and put this in a file for the student. And every time I work with the student or whenever I'm working on specifically collecting data, they complete this work sample and I do the scoring. Super simple. So that's the scissor skills one. That's kind of the gist of how every single resource works. I'll show you a few more just to kind of get an idea. So this one is, again, similar but different scoring criteria for a directed drawing. Here's the graph page, the different areas that we're looking at. And then here is the work sample. So this particular resource has 2 different levels. Level 1 is a little bit easier drawing, and then level 2 is one that's a little more difficult if the student is at that level or you just want to challenge them a little bit. Add your score, put it on the graph, report it across time. Super easy. I use these resources to inform my goals and to just kind of show, again, visually that progress over time. Okay. The last one I want to show really quickly is going to be for handwriting. It's a little bit different resource. Same instruction page, and then we have a lot more graphs, right? This has 6 different graphs and then some other things at the bottom. So what I like to do with the handwriting is the resource itself is included with pretty much anything you could think of tracking. We've got letter formation, sizing, line adherence, spacing, overall legibility, and then like a self-check accuracy if you're working on them being able to make corrections to their own work. You can use all of these or you can use one. So let's say I've got a goal for a student to write a sentence with correct spacing between their words, okay? Maybe I'm only going to fill out this graph, but they're all there in the event that you need that information. So for the sentences, we have writing prompts for every single month. They're all, geared towards kids, like December, write a sentence about your favorite holiday tradition. They can have fun with that. And you can use this or you don't have to. They want to write their own sentence. That's totally fine as well. And then we have the tri-lined paper or the single line paper, depending on what you deem appropriate. But you can prep that for each student how you would like. We also have a copying tool, which I'll go through really quickly as well. Same areas, with the exception of at the bottom, we have some addition, omission tracking. So if they're, adding extra letters or skipping letters, we can keep track of that as well. But again, we have tri-lined options for copying, and we have single line. These are silly sentences. They're themed based on the months, but they're also pangram sentences. So You can kind of take a look at every single letter of the alphabet, how they were written. So the September one, enthusiastic farmers quickly gather very juicy, oozy kiwis, loading 6 big crates onto pickup trucks. So they're just pangram sentences. But again, we're getting that copying data so that we can transfer it over and report on progress. There are 19 of these goal areas included so far for in the bundle, and I will link that down below for anyone who's interested. And the resource is growing. So every time I think of a new goal area, or if there's something that you don't see that you want to propose, let me know. I add new goals all the time and the price doesn't change. So basically, if you buy it right now, you get 19 resources. When the 20th one is included, you can download that one as well for the same price. You don't have to, you're not going to be upcharged essentially. So the sooner you buy, the better, and you have access to all these different goals so that, yes, it's a little bit more prep work at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the IEP cycle, however you want to do it. But once you have your packets prepped and ready to go, you don't have to think about it again. This is a no prep tool, right? You print it and then the student completes it, and then you have a confident, quantifiable progress monitoring tool for every single goal that you could think of. So I hope this has been helpful. Like I said, this is a talk that I wish I had gotten when I first started in school-based therapy, when I was so overwhelmed at the thought of progress monitoring and keeping data on goals. I wish I had had this resource. Honestly, that's why I created it. So I hope this is helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions, and happy progress monitoring.